Section 3 of The Cricket on the Hearth by Charles Dickens. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sage Turtle. The Cricket on the Hearth by Charles Dickens. Oh, you are here, are you? Wait a bit, I'll take you home. John Peerybingle, my service to you. More of my service to your pretty wife. Handsomer every day. Better, too, if possible. And younger, mused the speaker in a low voice. That's the devil of it. I should be astonished at your paying compliments, Mr. Tackleton, said Dot, not with the best grace in the world. But for your condition. You know all about it, then? I have got myself to believe it, somehow, said Dot. After a hard struggle, I suppose. Very. Tackleton the toy merchant, pretty generally known as Gruff and Tackleton, for that was the firm, though Gruff had been bought out long ago, only leaving his name and, as some said, his nature, according to its dictionary meaning, in the business. Tackleton the toy merchant was a man whose vocation had been quite misunderstood by his parents and guardians. If they had made him a money-lender, or a sharp attorney, or a sheriff's officer, or a broker, he might have sown his discontented oats in his youth, and after having had the full run of himself in an ill-natured transactions, might have turned out amiable, at least, for the sake of a little freshness and novelty, but cramped and chafing in the peaceable pursuit of toy-making, he was a domestic ogre who had been living on children all his life and was their implacable enemy. He despised all toys, wouldn't have bought one for the world, delighted in his malice to insinuate grim expressions onto the faces of brown-paper farmers who drove pigs to market, bellmen who advertised lost lawyers' consciences, movable old ladies who darned stockings or carved pies and other like samplings of his stock in trade, in appalling masks, hideous, hairy, red-eyed Jackson boxes, vampire kites, demoniacal tumblers who wouldn't lie down, and were perpetually flying forward to stare infants out of countenance. His soul perfectly revelled. They were his only relief and safety valve. He was great in such inventions. Anything suggestive of a pony nightmare was delicious to him. He'd even lost money, and he took to that toy very kindly, by getting up goblin slides from magic lanterns whereon the powers of darkness were depicted as a sort of supernatural shellfish with human faces. In intensifying the portraiture of giants, he had sunk quite a little capital, and though no painter himself, he could indicate for the instruction of his artists with a piece of chalk a certain furtive leer for the countenances of these monsters, which was safe to destroy the peace of mind of any young gentleman between the ages of 6 and 11 for the whole Christmas or midsummer vacation. What he was in toys, he was, as most men are, in other things. You may easily suppose, therefore, that within the great green cape, which reached down to the calves of his legs, there was buttoned up to the chin an uncommonly pleasant fellow, and that he was about as choice a spirit and as agreeable a companion as ever stood in a pair of bull-headed-looking boots with mahogany-coloured tops. Still, Tackleton, the toy merchant, was going to be married. In spite of all this, he was going to be married. And to a young wife, too. A beautiful young wife. He didn't look much like a bridegroom as he stood in the carrier's kitchen with a twist in his dry face and a screw in his body and his hat jerked over the bridge of his nose, and his hands tucked down into the bottoms of his pockets, and his whole sarcastic, ill-conditioned self peering out of one little corner of one little eye like the concentrated essence of any number of ravens. But a bridegroom he designed to be. In 3 days' time, next Thursday, the last day of the first month in the year, that's my wedding day, said Tackleton. Did I mention that he always had one eye wide open and one eye nearly shut, and that the one eye nearly shut was always the expressive eye? I don't think I did. That's my wedding day, said Tackleton, rattling his money. Why, it's our wedding day, too, exclaimed the carrier. Laughed Tackleton. Odd, you're just such another couple. Just. The indignation of Dot at this presumptuous assertion is not to be described. What next? His imagination would compass the possibility of just such another baby, perhaps. The man was mad. I say, a word with you, murmured Tackleton, nudging the carrier with his elbow and taking him a little apart. You'll come to the wedding. We're in the same boat, you know. How in the same boat? Inquired the carrier. A little disparity, you know, said Tackleton with another nudge. You haven't spent an evening with us beforehand. Why? Demanded John, astonished at this pressing hospitality. Why? Returned the other. That's a new way of receiving an invitation. Why, for pleasure, sociability, you know, and all that. I thought you were never sociable, said John in his plain way. It's of no use to be anything but free with you, I see, said Tackleton. Why, then, the truth is, you have what tea-drinking people call a sort of comfortable appearance together. You and your wife, we know better, you know, but... No, we don't know better, interposed John. What are you talking about? Well, we don't know better then, said Tackleton. We'll agree that we don't, as you like. What does it matter? I was going to say, as you have that sort of appearance, your company will produce a favorable effect on Mrs. Tackleton, that will be. And though I don't think your good lady's very friendly to me in this matter, still she can't help herself from falling into my views. For there's a compactness and coziness of appearance about her that always tells, even in an indifferent case. You'll say you'll come. We have arranged to keep our wedding day, as far as that goes, at home, said John. We have made the promise to ourselves these 6 months. We think, you see, that home... what's home? Cried Tackleton. 4 walls and a ceiling. Why don't you kill that cricket? I would, I always do. I hate their noise. There are 4 walls and a ceiling at my house. Come to me. You kill your crickets, eh? Said John. Scrunch 'em, sir, returned the other, setting his heel heavily on the floor. You'll say you'll come. It's as much your interest as mine, you know, that the women should persuade each other that they're quiet and contented and couldn't be better off. I know their way. Whatever one woman says, another woman is determined to clinch, always. There's that spirit of emulation among them, sir, that if your wife says to my wife, I'm the happiest woman in the world, and mine's the best husband in the world, and I dote on him, my wife will say the same to yours, or more, and half believe it. Do you mean to say she don't, then? Asked the carrier. Don't, cried Tackleton, with a short, sharp laugh. Don't what? The carrier had some faint idea of adding, dote upon you, but happening to meet the half-closed eye as it twinkled upon him over the turned-up collar of the cape, which was within an ace of poking it out, he felt it such an unlikely part and parcel of anything to be doted on that he substituted, that she don't believe it. Ah, you dog, you're joking, said Tackleton. But the carrier, though slow to understand the full drift of his meaning, eyed him in such a serious manner that he was obliged to be a little more explanatory. I have the humor, said Tackleton, holding up the fingers of his left hand and tapping the forefinger, to imply, there I am, Tackleton to wit. I have the humor, sir, to marry a young wife, and a pretty wife. Here he rapped his little finger to express the bride, not sparingly but sharply, with a sense of power. I'm able to gratify that humor, and I do. It's my whim. But now, look here. He pointed to where Dot was sitting thoughtfully before the fire, leaning her dimpled chin upon her hand and watching the bright blaze. The carrier looked at her, and then at him, and then at her, and then at him again. She honors and obeys, no doubt, you know, said Tackleton. And that, as I am not a man of sentiment, is quite enough for me. But do you think there's anything more in it?